Hey y'all, it's Gabby Beckford, Gen Z travel influencer, opportunity expert, and host of the new Young Travelers Network podcast. Each week, I amplify stunning stories of 20-something adventurers who opted out of the status quo, do things for the plot, and will hopefully inspire you to travel while you're young too. Today, I'm chatting with the Steve Irwin of our generation, 22-year-old recent grad Leslie Dixon, who left the world she knew behind to study abroad through her zoology program and university. She spent months working with big cats, rhinos, wild dogs, and the rest of Noah's Ark in South Africa. In her episode, we dig into what inspired her to take the leap and travel as a student, her expectations versus reality of living in South Africa, and her personal growth journey throughout all of it. We also touch on travel topics like lessons on ethical animal tourism, the dangers of voluntourism, and what we can really say is wrong and right as a visitor in a foreign country. Relax your shoulders, unclench that jaw, and tap into this convo. Today's guest is Leslie Dixon, a recent university grad that has worked with wildlife all over the world. Her cat is behind her as we speak. Like, she's just bringing it out literally on this call already. Leslie, we're going to be talking about like horses to cheetahs to cats to rhinos, your wildlife experiences, and especially with your study abroad, South Africa. I need to hear everything. Let's get started with just an introduction of yourself, if you don't mind. Can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, how old you are, what's your cat's name?
Yeah, so I'm Leslie Dixon. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm 22 years old. The cat behind me is Bagheera. I recently graduated from the University of Findlay, and I graduated with a bachelor's of animal science and a minor in psychology.
Wow, fantastic. Hi, Bagheera. I love the Jungle Book. Very apt for this conversation. Obviously, you're a big animal lover. Can you tell us where that started in your life? Was there a moment in your childhood? What was that spark?
Yeah, so I was always that kid, like catching bugs in my backyard, playing doctor with all my pets. I grew up with dogs, cats, and then eventually got into riding horses and showing them. Growing up, when people always ask, like, what do you want to be or what do you want to do? It was always a vet. And so when I decided for, where to go to school, I picked the University of Findlay in Ohio. They have a lot of hands-on classes with cattle, horses, whole bunch of different farm animals. I went there thinking I wanted to be an equestrian vet, and my career path changed drastically. I got an internship at the Omaha's Henry Doorly Zoo and Aquarium. Yeah, just a lot of different things, a lot of with like their hoofstock animals. So giraffes, rhinos, a cheetah, like a whole bunch of a variety of animals. I got introduced to education, how we're educating the public, and that really spoke to me. And then especially the conservation side, there's so many different animal species that are underrepresented. That really spoke with me. I wanted to be able to make a difference with individual species, individual animals, make those populations sustainable.
Wow, that is the most beautiful, origin story. I feel like you're a superhero and that's your origin story. I'd love to hear about how you brought your love of wildlife to life in South Africa, right? So you did a study abroad program?
I went with a program or organization called Loop Abroad. And yeah, South Africa was kind of just the obvious choice for me, and I don't regret anything. So yeah.
Can you talk to me about maybe the top one or two things that were worrying you and how you overcame those mental hurdles to commit to it, say yes? And then at the end of it, if you felt like it was worth it.
Yeah, I definitely tried to learn as much as I could about South Africa before I went there. The culture, the different languages I may encounter, even the history of South Africa, the apartheid, all of that kind of stuff. And so landing in South Africa was definitely a culture shock in different ways. When I got there, it was dark outside. And so I couldn't even
I hate that.
Yeah, so I couldn't even see.
You're like, I can't even tell if is this the right airport even? Where am I? That's the biggest I hate flying at night.
The plan is to look outside and it's black and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know where I'm at. And then just getting off the plane, just that first 2 hours just in South Africa, I was like, okay, everything is different here. As an American, we hear, different things about different countries, but you never fully understand it until you're in that country, or you don't realize how much you've been sheltered from. Because I think as an American, I'm very privileged in many ways.
I think that's such an important piece of travel. The statistic is only 30% of Americans have their passport, and only 10% of that 30% actually use them for international travel. And so we're so used to not having a passport. Everything's in English. Like so much is the same around the US, even though there's so many subcultures in the US, that you go somewhere else. And that's kind of the first, like you said, it's a privilege. It's such a big shock to be like, oh, not everyone in the world lives like we do. I mean, I think we go into any of these types of programs or travel abroad experiences, have an expectation, and they're never exactly like it. Sometimes they're way better. How did that expectation meet reality for you? And overall, like, would you say it was worth it?
Yeah. So overall, I'll get into like the pros and cons, but overall it was I would do it again in a heartbeat, even with the same hurdles that I had to overcome. I knew some things were going to be different, like the medicine side of things, the cheetah breeding, rewilding. That was something I was very excited for, but that was my least favorite out of my whole study abroad program. My idea of what that place was going to be changed so drastically. That is where I also learned a lot of life lessons. And I think I personally grew as a person by being there, even though it wasn't a positive experience. But then again, like I wouldn't trade that experience out because I think it has helped me in my career today. And then going into the research section, they essentially hand rear hornbills. So when hornbills have eggs, they usually have two.
Isn't that the people think it's a toucan, but it's not, from The Lion King?
Yes, yeah. So yeah,
Zazu.
Yes, Zazu. Yeah. So there's a lot of different types of hornbills. So that's one of them. The one I was around was like gigantic. I think they're huge. They're like the size of like a dog, like a medium-sized dog. It seemed like they're really big, but yeah, it's basically like Zazu, just gigantic.
Giant birds.
And so
I love it.
Yeah,
wow.
So they're southern crown hornbills, and they're actually pests in South Africa. So their beaks are essentially like
giant
little daggers. Like, yeah, they will break windows, slash tires. Like,
oh my god, they're literally thugs.
Yes.
Like you're like,
I know.
I love the hornbills.
Yeah, like, I am not a bird person, but they're my favorite birds because I just relate to them. I'm like,
they're chaotic.
They're just, I love their personality. But yeah, the hornbills usually have two eggs, and the parents only take care of one egg. So this organization takes the second egg, which is like the backup egg, and they hand raise it. And they hand raising it using like puppets on their hands so they don't associate a face. And so then eventually that chick gets introduced to a group of hornbills through a window. And then the adult hornbills will start taking care of the chick slowly until they can release it. It's just a really cool organization that, that second egg isn't going to waste, and that, that chick is growing up. And then the last part of the research area was actually working with a pangolin. Pangolins are kind of one of those animals.
Oh my god.
That are kind of like
long armadillo looking thing.
Yeah, it's like
I actually was watching. I like do this. I was watching. What was I watching yesterday? Planet Earth, one of those types of shows on Netflix. Actually, it's called Wild Babies, and it's I saw a wild baby pangolin. Yes, and I was like, I'm so gagged that you're talking about this. And they're so. First of all, they're extremely hunted, right? Like, especially Chinese medicine, people love to snatch them up, and they're rare. Mm-hmm. And then they're sensitive. Like, they're just such a cute little babies, and they have like one little baby. Like, they don't have like 8; they have one, so they're like already super rare to find. And then they're super hunted. Like, that's so cool that you saw one. They're
so they're the most trafficked animal for like Asian traditional medicine. Like, I kind of knew what a pangolin was, but I didn't really. They're kind of like unicorns. Like, of them, but like, are they actually kind of thing? And so never thought I would ever see a pangolin. I honestly couldn't tell you if I'll ever see one again. So seeing two in like 24, 48 hour span was absolutely incredible, and something that was definitely a highlight for my study abroad trip that I didn't expect to do.
I feel like if you're not an animal nerd, you're like, okay, so she saw like an aardvark, like, and I, as an animal nerd, no, I'm like literally lit for you. Like, that's so cool, and that is so rare, and it's so bucket list, and to be doing all of this on a study abroad experience, I feel like that is, I do not want that to get lost. That I think the statistic is 40%, or maybe even like 40 to 60% of Americans study abroad in the 3 cities of Rome, Paris, and London. That's it. So
Yep.
when people
Yep.
when like people ask me about my study abroad and I say Dubai, they're like, wow, you're so like, wow, so cool. This is really so cool because this is such a really once in a lifetime, like unique, very specific program that you have to be in, like trained for. And like I went to Dubai and had fun. You went to South Africa and like saw one of the rarest animals on earth, and like we're really hands-on participating in these conservation efforts and like traveling all around the country. Like it's just really incredible. So like first of all, kudos, congratulations, and like thank you for like the work you did. And honestly,
Yeah.
not even just like the physical work, like the taking the chance on yourself to go and learn this and then kind of bring this back to your own personal community, your school, but also Americans in general. I would love to know how it kind of weighs on you in terms of like inspiring you for future goals in your life or future aspirations you have in that field, in your field of work, how it affected you in that long-term sense of what your career could be. Like how did that study abroad experience shift you? And then I want to circle back because that cheetah story was interesting and I need to hear the specifics.
Yeah. Having all of these experiences in South Africa, coming back, getting back into like the New York airport, I was like, I did not miss this. I did not miss this many people.
Oh my God.
And like a stereotypical American girl, the first thing I did was got Starbucks. Like, I'm not even a Starbucks person, but like that was the first thing I did. And I was like, this feels wrong. About like 2 months after, I was kind of in that period of like, okay, do I go get a job? Do I travel more? Do I go get my master's? Or yeah, it was just those couple months after was kind of a tough time
It's
for
an
me.
interesting transition.
Yeah, like it.
Yeah, from college life to huge once in a lifetime experience to like
Back home. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's
So it was.
that's all done.
It was definitely a hard time for me. I really did just sit for a while and was just thinking about my trip and like how did being around people of different culture or language, like how did that affect me? Being at that zoo in South Africa, half of the staff couldn't read or write. And so it was very eye-opening and also very hard being faced with that. I was like, I can't, like my brain can't comprehend that, your country doesn't support education, doesn't, give you the tools to succeed. And so that was very difficult. That was one thing I had to sit with a lot. And then just compared to the United States, like I work with cheetahs at my zoo. And when it comes time to feed them, I go to our diet kitchen. There's a whole department. They've created this diet, and I just pick up a little bag of food and go feed an animal. This zoo, a lot of their big cat diets or meat is donated. So it's a lot of horses and cattle that have passed away for one reason or another. Usually horses, it's colic, which is like that abdominal impaction. And so it's up to the keepers, it's up to me to chop this horse up and then feed it out. And as someone who has a horse,
Ooh.
That was a little hard.
Wow.
Like the first time, because I did it multiple times, the first time was very hard because I was like, okay, like I had to think like, Leslie, this is not your horse. This horse, died under certain circumstances. And now like I had to think about the bigger picture of, yes, it is very sad that this horse passed away, but now we're being able to use all of that horse for a positive
at least
reason.
it's not going to waste.
Yeah, and so that was at first a mental game of chopping up a horse. Like didn't think.
No, yeah, visually that's pretty tough.
So,
I'm gonna give it that. You may have to lay awake at night that first night.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, and so like that was just super eye opening. Just very privileged in the United States of like I just go grab a bag. South Africa, I was the one doing everything. Yeah, so just a lot of different things that I came into contact with that were very different from the United States. Opened my eyes to a lot of different things and different perspectives on things, especially when it comes to the wildlife aspect as well. I don't think any animal is truly wild because even like the national parks, there's a fence, there's some sort of barrier, there's someone always there. And that was very hard for me to come to terms with. No animal's really wild because of the human interference that has happened. When I was at Kruger Park for the first time, my tour guide, the first thing I really wanted to see was a rhino. I love rhinos. And so I'd asked, I was like, like the only thing we haven't really seen today is a rhino. Like, do you think we're going to see one? And he's like, I haven't seen a rhino in 7 years in this area of the park. And so I was like, okay. And then as we're leaving Kruger, we see a female with her calf. a white rhino.
No way.
And so I
A
just started,
white rhino?
yeah, a white rhino. So I just started crying. I was like, you literally just said we weren't going to see one, and there's one with a baby. And so I felt an immense amount of joy in that moment, but at the same time, I was like, I was terrified for that animal. No one's protecting her. As soon as, I'm a tourist and I see a rhino, that means probably 100 other vehicles are going to see this rhino, and good chance someone's going to call it in. And within a couple hours, there could be poachers. And so it was, harsh reality of like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see this animal. But you really just have to be able to identify the pros and cons of our situation, see everything from every perspective, not trying to stereotype anything, any culture, any country, anything like that. Because every stereotypical thought that I had going into South Africa changed, like it was broken. And then also just, I voiced my opinion a lot more than I did. I see animal welfare so vividly now because of the experiences I've had. And so going back to my zoo, I've been very vocal about, okay, this animal needs better welfare. This animal needs to be on a different diet. Let's try this in a training session instead, that kind of stuff. And so it has changed, my personal life, but also my professional life. And I can always relate what I go through on an everyday basis back to my experience in South Africa. I'm really glad that I've had that experience.
Yeah, that's a super rich context to have. I'm sure that you're a better asset to your job and your zoo for having had this experience, but also, like you said, your personal growth into your community. And I love the point that you made that you had so many expectations going into South Africa, expectations of the program, but even maybe subconscious expectations of what life would be like, or like what day to day would be like, or the things you would like and what you didn't like, or stereotypes even. Everything that we think we know, let's take it with a grain of salt, because you just never know until you go. And even then, we're seeing it from our own lens and everything. And so I feel like that's my biggest lesson from travel is like, I know nothing. I don't know anything. Okay, time for a quick break. But when we come back, Leslie's going to tell me what it's like to be the first in her family to travel solo and how it's changed her perspective on things. Even some of the negative experience have changed her for the better. See you soon.
I was the first one to ever travel abroad, kind of by myself. Like my sister had been to one place, but she went with like friends. I was going to a whole country with no one there to support me, except just the people that are supposed to pick me up from the airport and my professor that was there and all that. But yeah, my family, I would say, was pretty worried, mostly about safety. Loop Abroad had all those programs, all those countries. And I found like my dad and my family were kind of just like, okay, this place is dangerous. This place is dangerous. I'm like, everywhere is dangerous. I was like, and honestly, if I'm being honest, I felt safer in South Africa than I do in the United States. I think as an American,
no one believes me when I say that, but like, you went
and like I felt like the people in South Africa were some of the kindest people I've ever met in my entire life. I think as an American, we're kind of conditioned to fear, and
yes,
I felt that, like I felt on edge in every public space that I went to, and then I got to a point where I was like, why am I, making myself so anxious and super aware of everything when I could just be enjoying the moment. Being an American there, I met people from all over the world. I met a guy from Italy, a girl from the other side of South Africa, Mexico, a couple other Americans. And it was kind of interesting, like the questions I would get asked first. As an American, usually it was my political stance, and then it would be something around gun control. That was like really like that's the first two things you think about when you think of the United States. Like how awful is that? Yeah. And so, which I mean, I think I'd say the same thing about me, like asking different questions about their country. I have no idea. Like, yeah,
I'm like Italy pasta.
Yeah,
like,
no, literally.
You would say
Italy.
that.
I was just like, oh, like. Do you like talk with your hands a lot?
What's
your
favorite pasta?
Yes, like,
he's like, what are you talking about?
Yes. And like we even had like a thing one night where we were like, okay, we want you to like have a conversation and you cannot use your hands. And he couldn't. Like it was so fun. And like being around like people that were like my age, different cultures, it was so funny to like just be able to sit back and like see what people think about Americans and be able to at the same time learn about those cultures without even being in their country. Like the amount of knowledge I know about Italy and Mexico and Holland and all of that now, just because I've met someone from that country, is super incredible.
I would love to hear from you moments that you just kind of sat there and you were like, how did I get here? This is so cool. Like, I can imagine. Or any moments that you have like that still stand out to you to this day that you just kind of hold on to as pillars of that experience.
Yeah. So I'll kind of give you two examples. I'll do like a positive and a negative experience. But going back to that cheetah thing, it was a cheetah breeding and rewilding program. And like I said, like this was what I was most excited for. Like this is what I thought I wanted to go and do, is rehabilitate an animal and then rewild it. The first day was just kind of getting to learn the lay of the land. Like we got to go see all of the cheetah enclosures, which the facilities were so incredibly nice. Like these animals had so much room. The cabins and all that they stayed in were very nice. This looks like a great facility. Now, like the next day I was like, okay, let's see, firsthand. Next 2 days, I'm very much a person who, when I'm taking in new information, I'm very quiet. Like I like to absorb it all and then think about it. And so like the cheetah aspect, they had a couple cats that were actually owned by international people. So again, that wildlife trade, people owning big cats and knowing that those cats won't be released because they're being owned by someone.
So it was kind of like, sorry, I'm trying to understand. No. It was like a cheetah rewilding facility, but it was kind of like a horse stable where like some, I don't know, Mark Cuban owns the cheetah and like he just keeps him there.
Yeah. So that was
interesting.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I was like, okay, like, and so I like took
that is not the sole purpose of this facility.
Yeah. So I kind of just took that and I was like, okay, like just still be open. Like my big motto for this trip was be very open to everything. Take everything in. Don't judge something before you know something. And then they had a cheetah there. Her front 2 legs had stunted. So if you ever seen like those videos of like those little, I don't know, munchkin kitties, like with the tiny little feet, that's how her front feet were. They were super small, but then her back legs were normal. So she was kind of like
normal. What?
And punched. And so they had told me that incident occurred when the cat was born. Like her mom had like stepped on her or something like that. But then come to find out that they bred this cat. So this cat can barely, stand and function as is. But now you're adding to that by making this cat pregnant, adding excess weight to them, and then just the whole birthing process. And so when they're telling me that, when they're telling that, I'm like, how could you ever breed this cat? Like that was super hard. And then in my head, I was like, this cat had to have had a C-section. Like there's no way it could physically give birth, which then they said, yeah, the cat tried to give birth naturally and couldn't. So we had to do a C-section. And I could have told you that, before you even bred the cat, that this cat was going to need a lot of work. And again, should not have been bred. So that was very off-putting to me. And so I think that experience has really pushed my comfort zone a lot, where now if I see something animal welfare related, I'm going to say something, because in the States, I can make a difference. I can change things. But then going to like a positive thing was, while I was at that zoo, I was doing my big cat course, and the zoo manager, she knew I came from the zoo. And so she kind of sat me down and was like, what can we do to make this zoo better? How can we influence the lives of these animals more? And so I kind of was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe she's asking me that. Like, I never thought I'd be asked that. And so I was like, well, I think your guys' zoo is amazing. The only thing that I would add is, enrichment at my zoo it's an everyday thing. I was like, I think you guys could incorporate more. Because during my study abroad program, I did create enrichment for these zoo animals. And it was incredible to watch the keepers, because, these keepers, they think that their job is, feed the animals, clean up the exhibits, and that's it. So then be able to show them, like, if you do enrichment, like, you're going to see these animals display behaviors that maybe you haven't seen before. And so one of my enrichment projects was for the jaguars. I had this fire hose like ball hanging from this like overlook in this animal's exhibit, and there was water over it. And then I put a whole bunch of different scents within the ball from different exhibits, like some rabbit fur, snake skin, lavender, a whole bunch of different smells. And so this jaguar actually jumped on the ball and was like swinging from it and like playing with it. And the keepers just watching like their faces light up with like and laughing at what these animals were doing, when it's like, these are their behaviors. This is what you could encourage every day. And so I told the zoo manager, I was like, you guys can just, do more enrichment. I think that would be great. But also, at the end of my study abroad experience, that program, they wanted a review of what I thought about the program. program. And so what I said was include animal behavior, include that animal training aspect. And so this semester, the next students, they're able to start training animals. So it's nice knowing that like my experience of training this animal at the zoo has impacted future students and that they're now getting exposure to that. I think traveling, especially when you're young, is so important. You know, if you want that education side, get the education side, you know, try and learn as much as possible about the culture and everything there. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but also enjoy yourself. And, you know, you're young. I think a good thing to note is when you're traveling, yes, take as many pictures as possible, but also just live in the moment. Took my camera when I was there. I love photography. Took a lot of cool pictures, but there were moments.
Yeah, your photography is great. Wait, plug your Instagram really quick because you have great photography.
Thank you. One of the experiences I remember is hyenas are one of my favorite animals. I just remember seeing the hyena just walking across, like coming over to us, like we were in our car in Kruger, and he was just walking across. And so I took one picture, and I have that picture, but I just put my camera down. I was like, I just want to live in this moment. Like, I don't know if I'll see another hyena. And that was actually the only hyena I saw. And so after this trip, I really have tried to be like, okay, like you don't need to broadcast everything because you may see things that, or do things that you never thought you could.
Wow. Thank you so much, Leslie, for sharing your story with us, but also sharing the reflections of that story and like how it's continuing to impact you in your life. And I think it's so cool. I think that one of the biggest things that I've taken away from your stories is how much we benefit, especially as young travelers, when we just give ourselves the opportunities to be in new spaces, to be uncomfortable, to be out of our comfort zone and out of our usual, because it just, you know, puts you in situations that you never would have been otherwise. And it gives you a chance to, like you have shown us through your interview, to find out who we are, like whether it was that negative experience with the cheetahs, giving you that opportunity to say like, no, this is me standing firm in what I believe in, like, and what I want to see. And like, this is making you more secure in like who you are and what you believe in, or whether that's that super positive experience with animal behavior and be like, wow, I didn't know I could, you know, do this in South Africa. And like, I never would have just like thought about it or planned it, but like if given the opportunity space, I can step up to that and leave this legacy behind. And it's just so cool to hear your story and in your niche, in your world, in your passion, how travel has impacted you and how, you know, if we just kind of take that risk, how it can pay off for us tenfold and honestly pay off in the world tenfold, like making the world a better place. Please tell everyone where they can follow you on social media if you're comfortable sharing your Instagram, because again, you have beautiful photography. I think everyone should see it.
So yeah, my photography is ldixon_photography. I usually just post, you know, if it's like World Rhino Day or World Painted Dog Day is actually coming up. And so I like to post that just as like an educational outlet, but also just somewhere that I can showcase my photography, mostly for myself, but also just for my family and friends. And then, yeah, my personal one is Leslie Dixon_27. Still post a lot about animals on that one as well. Yeah, so I would say follow the photography one for animal pictures, unless you really want to see my personal life. But yeah.
It has been such a joy to talk to you today, Leslie, and I can't wait to share this with the world, and I'll be listening back to this episode over and over again to live my wild thornberry dream. So thank you again so much for your time.
I've enjoyed talking with you guys too, so this is awesome.
Huge thanks to Leslie for taking the time to chat with me about her adventures in South Africa. The story about the hornbills, Zazu, he represented for his species. Thank you. If you listened to the episode, give me a follow wherever you're listening and drop a review. It really helps me, but more importantly, it helps other young travel dreamers get inspired by stories just like Leslie's. If you want to travel but don't know where to start though, I got you. Go to packslight.com, packslight.com for tons of info and resources to get you from traveling one day to day one. And P.S. if you liked this podcast, you should check out Circa. They have podcast guides that cover hundreds of destinations for your next big adventure. Learn more by heading to cercatravel.com. Chat soon. Mwah.